Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host, Mitch. Glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today's episode is going to be a $50 deck tech. When I say $50, I mean that is an overall deck cost. Both shipping and commanders that are $10 or less are going to be included in that cost, but basic lands will not be. On this deck tech, I'm going to take you through its strategy, the tactics, and how this deck wins. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And while you're at it, subscribe and review our podcast as well. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCGplayer affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Today's episode is a patron-selected deck tech. Once a month, patrons vote on what commander that they'd like to see in an upcoming episode. The commander that gets the most votes wins. And the commander that they selected was actually partner commanders with Brallin and Shabraz. Brallin Skyshark Rider is a 3/3 human shaman that costs 3 and a red, and it has partner with Shabraz, and whenever you discard a card, put a ++1 counter on Brallin Skyshark Rider and deals 1 damage to each opponent. You can also pay a red and target shark gains trample until end of turn. And then Shabraz the Skyshark is a 3/3 flying shark bird that partners with Brallin, and it costs 3 white blue. It has whenever you draw a card, put a ++1 counter on Shabraz the Skyshark and you gain 1 life. And by paying Azorius, target human gains flying until end of turn. So the basic concept of the deck is this: we're going to get our commanders out and start wheeling to get a ton of value off of our commanders from drawing and discarding cards. As always, I'm going to take you through 10 different tactics to show you how this deck works and how we're going to win with it. So let's start things off with tactic number 1, when sharks fly. First up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble, which we can pay 2 and tap and sacrifice to get a basic land into play tapped. Next up, there's Prismatic Lens, which we can tap for our colors or can filter our mana. And then Star Compass comes into play tapped and can tap for any of our colors depending on our land situation. Sphere of the Suns also comes into play tapped and it can tap for any color 3 times. Next up, of course, we're going to be running each of our signets with Azorius, Izzet, and Boros. And then we're going to be running 2 of the talismans with Talisman of Creativity and Talisman of Conviction. And finally, we are running Rogrin Crystal, which can tap for any of our colors, and it's got cycling too. So this might not be the most efficient mana rock, but it does have flexibility, which is nice. Because again, by cycling it, we are discarding and drawing, so we are going to benefit from both of our commanders. But now let's move on to tactic number 2, less is more. So on top of ramping, we've also got some ways to reduce the cost of some of our spells. Goblin Romancer says, instant sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Jace's Sanctum does the exact same thing, but it also has whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, scry 1. So this can help us cast more spells, and it can also help us draw into the right cards. And then Arcane Melee says, instant sorcery spells cost 2 less to cast. So this might benefit our opponents, but the effect is well worth it in this deck. The more wheels that we can cast in a turn, the more value that we get out of both of our commanders. But before we start talking about wheels, let's talk about some smaller spells that can help us out too in tactic number 3, ups and downs. First up, we've got Magmatic Insight, which says, additional cost to cast it, we discard a land card and we draw 2 cards. We're going to be drawing a ton of cards with this deck, so chances are we're going to have a land in our hand that we can discard with this. And then Faithless Looting lets us draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards, and it's got flashback for 2 and a red. Next up, there's Frantic Search, which also draws 2 and discards 2, but we can also untap up to 3 lands. So this is essentially a free spell that provides us value and can help us dig through our deck. Up next, there's Tormenting Voice, which says additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card, and draw 2 cards. And then Thrill Possibility does the exact same thing, but at instant speed. Cathartic Reunion goes even further, making us discard 2 to draw 3. And then there's Shard of Chorus, which says draw 2, then discard a card unless you've attacked with a creature this turn. These cards can all help us dig into the high-impact spells for this deck. So let's go over some of those spells now in tactic number 4, Wheel in the Sky. First up, there's Solarian Winds, which makes us discard our hand and then we draw that many cards. And then Collective Defiance has Escalate 1 and it says choose 1 or more. Target player discards all the cards in their hand, then draws that many cards. Collective Defiance deals 4 damage to target creature, or Collective Defiance deals 3 damage to target opponent. And then Shattered Perception is basically a wheel that we can cast twice that says discard all the cards in your hand, then draw that many cards, and it's got flashback for 5 and a red. Now, wheels are fantastic in this deck again because our commanders both benefit whenever we wheel. By discarding our hand, Brallin deals a ton of damage to our opponents and it gets a lot of counters on it. And then by drawing cards, Shabraz is going to get huge as well, and we're going to gain a ton of life. So since both of these creatures can get huge, we can win through commander damage, or we can just win by pinging them down with Brallin. But we're nowhere near done with our wheels just yet, so next up we've got Leave to Chance. Leave is an instant that says return any number of target permanents you own to your hand. And then Chance is a sorcery with Aftermath. It says discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. Fateful Showdown is going to deal damage to our creature or player equal to the number of cards in our hand, then we discard all those cards and we draw that many cards. Next up there's Flux, which is basically a wheel for every single player. It says each player chooses and discards any number of cards, then draws that many cards, and we draw a card. So by drawing that card, we actually replace Flux as well. And then Heartwarming Redemption is somewhat similar, but just for us. It says discard all the cards in your hand, then draw that many cards plus 1. You gain life equal to the number of cards in your hand. Next up, there's Laquatus' Creativity, which says target player draws cards equal to the number of cards in their hand, then discards that many cards. So this is somewhat like a reverse wheel. And then Windfall says each player discards all the cards in their hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. So if one of our opponents has more cards than us, we're going to be drawing even more cards. And then Forgotten Creation is a repeatable kind of wheel. It has Skulk and says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may discard all the cards in your hand. If you do, draw that many cards. Speaking of repeatable wheels, we also have Neheb Dreadhorde Champion. When it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, we can discard any number of cards. If we do, we draw that many cards and add that much red. Until end of turn, you don't lose mana as steps and phases end. So this can also generate us a lot of mana to cast even more wheels to have a huge turn. And then there's Dragon Mage, which says when it deals combat damage to a player, each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. And finally, we've got Magus the Wheel, which has pay 1 in red and tap and sacrifice it. Each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. Getting us up to 7 cards can be a fantastic way to help us wheel some more. Now, we might be done with wheel spells, but we've got some other spells that can help, so let's go on to tactic number 5, Seeing Double. First up, there's Double Cast, which says when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Doubling up a wheel can be huge and even game ending. So we're also running Increasing Vengeance, which says copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. If this spell was cast from a graveyard, copy that spell twice instead. You may choose new targets for the copies, and it's got flashback for 3 red. And then Howl the Horde says when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy, and it's got Raid. So if we attacked with a creature this turn, when we cast our next instant or sorcery spell, we copy that spell an additional time, and we can choose new targets for the copy. So wheeling once with a spell is great. Wheeling twice is even better, and 3 times, that definitely can end the game. And of course, it can be great to double up all of our wheels and all of our other instants and sorceries with Swarm Intelligence. It says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Once this hits the field, our opponents are definitely in big trouble. But outside of Brallin, we've got some other ways to benefit off of discarding, so let's move on to tactic number 6, Extra Helpers. First up, there's Glinthorn Buccaneer, which says whenever you discard a card, Glinthorn Buccaneer deals 1 damage each opponent. So with this and Brallin in play, we're going to be dealing 2 damage each opponent instead of 1 every single time we discard a card. And then Surly Badgersaur says, whenever you discard a creature card, put a +1/+1 counter on Surly Badgersaur. Whenever you discard a land card, create a treasure token. And whenever you discard a non-creature, non-land card, Surly Badgersaur fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. This can provide us a ton of value, especially when we discard lands, because it can really help us go off. And finally, there's Curator Mysteries, which says whenever you cycle or discard another card, scry 1, and it's got cycling for a blue. The more value that we can get out of our discard spells and our wheels, the better. But speaking of some other valuable cards, let's move on to tactic number 7, Value Added. First up, there's Raking Claws, which says target creature gains double strike until end of turn, and it's got cycling for 2. So this can easily help us kill with commander damage, or we can cycle it away if we need to. And then Reconnaissance Mission says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card, and it's got cycling for 2. Next up, there's Tectonic Reformation, which says each land card in your hand has cycling for red, and it's got cycling too. So this allows us to cycle each and every single one of our lands, which can be huge for this deck. And then Drakehaven can provide value in a different way. It says whenever you cycle or discard a card, you may pay 1. If you do, create a 2/2 blue Drake creature token with flying. And finally, another enchantment that can be huge for this deck is Whirlwind of Thawne. It says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, draw a card. The more spells we cast, the more cards that we draw, and the bigger our wheels get. Now, we've talked about our plan, but how about throwing a wrench into our opponent's plans? So let's go on to tactic number 8. How about no? First up, there's Negate, which is going to counter-target non-creature spell. And then Countervailing Wind says counter-target spell unless its controller pays 1 for each card in your graveyard, and it's got cycling too. Next up, there's Neutralize, which can also cycle for 2, and it says counter-target spell. And then there's Is It Charm, which is very flexible. It says choose 1, counter-target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 2. Is It Charm deals 2 damage to our creature, or draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. And finally, there's Norok Stealth Suit, which can give one of our commanders Shroud, and we can equip it at instant speed for blue. We've got even more ways to deal with our opponent's things, so let's move on to tactic number 9, Get Out of Here. First up, we've got Forsake the Worldly, which says exile target artifact or enchantment, and it's got cycling for 2. And then Cast Out has Flash, and when it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent opponent controls until Cast Out leaves the battlefield, and it's got cycling for a white. And finally, there's Crush Contraband, which says choose 1 or both, exile target artifact, exile target enchantment. Now this deck can already kill really quickly, but we can speed things up even further, so it's time for us to move on to our final tactic, tactic number 10, Going for a Ride. And we're going to be starting things off with our golden pick of the deck, which is our number 1 card out of our 99. And the golden pick for this deck is Curiosity. Curiosity is an aura that costs a blue, and it says enchant creature. Whenever enchanted creature deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. This card is a 1-card combo with Brallin. Again, whenever we discard a card, Brallin's going to ping each of our opponents for 1. With Curiosity on Brallin, we're going to be drawing 3 cards every single time we do so. So if we've got ways to discard those cards, we can keep pinging our opponents and draw more and more and more. And this can even just kill in our discard phase if we have to discard. We discard, we ping, we draw, we discard, we ping, we draw, so on and so forth. Keep in mind that you are limited by your library size, but also keep in mind that this is a May. You don't have to draw that card when Brallin deals damage. So as long as everyone has less life than the number of cards in your library, this is pretty much just an instant win. Curiosity is an incredible combo piece for just 1 mana, and that's what makes it the Golden Pig. Another card that combos with Brallin is Tandem Lookout. It's got Soul Bond, and it says as long as Tandem Lookout is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has, whenever this creature deals damage to an opponent, draw a card. Make sure you keep in mind that this one is not a May, unlike Curiosity. Next up, there's Psychosis Crawler, which says whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. So this is kind of like a reverse Brallin, and it's extremely effective in this deck. And then there's Bag of Holding, which says whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard, and you can pay 2 and tap it to draw a card and discard a card, and pay 4 and tap it to sacrifice it and return all cards exiled with it back to their owner's hand. So essentially this can get all the cards back in your hand that you discarded, and then you can have one huge turn where you can easily take out your opponents. Next up, we've got some ways to double up damage, which can really help out with Brallin. Insult says damage can't be prevented this turn. If a source you control would deal damage this turn, deals double that damage instead. And then Dictate of the Twin Gods is going to double up everyone's damage, but it's got flash, so we can take advantage of it first. Next up, there's Quest for the Pure Flame, which says whenever a source you control deals damage to an opponent, you may put a quest counter on Quest for the Pure Flame. And then remove 4 quest counters from it and sacrifice it. If any source you control would deal damage to a creature or player this turn, deals double that damage to that creature or player instead. And finally, we've got some more ways to help Brallin out with Jaya, Embermaw Hellion, and Torbran. Jaya Venerate Fire Mage says if another red source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals that much damage plus 1 to that permanent or player instead. And Embermaw Hellion essentially does the exact same thing. Torbran, Thane of Red Fells, takes it a step further by saying if a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, deals that much damage plus 2 instead. With any of these on the field, Brallin can take our opponents out very quickly with a couple of wheels. But now it's time for us to see how our deck stacks up when it comes to price. The average Brallin Shabraz EDH rec deck is going to set you back $684.06. Our deck is going to be much more affordable, coming in at $49.35. If you want to see a breakdown of this deck's cost, check out the link in the description. But as with any budget deck, there are always ways to improve on it, so let's go over some reasonable upgrades. First up, let's add in Swiftfoot Boots by taking out Norok's Stealth Suit. Next up, let's add in Lightning Greaves by taking out Reconnaissance Mission. And then we're going to add in Talisman of Progress by taking out Sphere of the Suns. Next up, let's add in Ophidian Eye by taking out Arcane Melee. And then let's add in Reforge the Soul by taking out Doublecast. Finally, let's add in Riel the Everwise by taking out Drake Haven. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this deck tech are. And make sure you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons who help make this show possible. I truly couldn't do any of this without your support. If you want to support this channel directly, consider becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck techs. There are even tiers where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. You can check out all the Patreon tiers and rewards at patreon.com/commandersquarters. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.